All right, welcome to the frame control. We're just gonna wait a couple minutes. Okay, so the frame control protocol is all about learning about frame. And there's many frames, there's not just one. Frame it's a comprehensive term to look at all the different ways that you can work with people, and more importantly, women, right? This isn't just for your current relationship. This could be for all future relationships. This could be for your daughters, could be for your moms, could be for your aunts, your cousins, coworkers. Any women that you encounter will benefit from you employing these methods. So I want to go over kind of what is frame. Let's talk about what is frame. It's not something that I invented. It's been around since the 50s. Right? It was based on some anthropologist research, Gregory Bateson, and he basically came up with it's a way of looking at social dynamics. Now, you've seen in recent times, frame has been mostly applied to like the dating scene, and this is just because people don't talk about it as much in their day-to-day lives, right? They're normies, they're NPCs. They don't look deeper into things. They just go to therapy or they do something else to try to fix the problem. The important thing to understand here is that frame exists everywhere, right? It's every interpersonal relationship that you have, it's going to exist, right? When you're a parent, you could be exhibiting frame. When you're a coach, when you're at work, like it's just a term that applies to psychology and social dynamics as people correspond with one another. So it's really productive for relationships because it helps us kind of understand the fundamentals of how men and women can operate, right? Men have been the same for hundreds of thousands of years, however long humankind's been around. Women have been the same. None of these things change. The only thing that's changed is the environment around it. And people have adapted to the environment, but now they've ignored their fundamental being of who they are, right? And this is frame. This is where frame comes from. This is what frame is based on. It's not based on newer research. It's not based on how things change and technology or anything like that. This is how men and women operate together as a couple, or how people, social dynamics, right? All of that stuff. It's about understanding how people organize, I guess you could say. Not really organize, because that's something else. But all right, so the key thing to remember is always try to consider who is the authority figure. That is the one that has the frame. Right? Kids are in their parents' frame, or they should be. I've seen many situations where the parents are in their kids' frame. And that's what happens when they offset. Someone has to take that authority figure, right? If the parents aren't going to be parents, they're too worried about being friends, then they're going to fall more in their kids' frame. Whereas the kids should naturally fall in the parents' frame. That's when things are most successful. That's how I am with my kids, and I imagine all of you are with all of your kids. So employees are in their boss's frame, very typically, right? This is one that's, sometimes employees don't want to be in the boss's frame. I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to work for myself. So I didn't want to be in the boss's frame. So I'd always kind of butt heads. Now, I never got laid off, but you will get laid off if you don't stay in your boss's frame, because they can assert that over you, right? They always have that underlying power over you. Players are in their coach's frame. Same thing. Right? The coaches have a frame that they establish, ideally, and then the players have to operate within that. Military is in their senior officer's frame, right? The citizens, right? We're in the U.S. government's frame. If the IRS, CIA, any of those three-letter organizations comes knocking on your door, you're going to have to operate within their frame, right? You're just going to obey what they do. Same thing as if you get pulled over for a ticket, right? You are now in the CHP's frame. He's establishing the frame. And some people will abuse this power, right? We know this. This happens in relationships too. It's just people corresponding with one another. You're going to start to see this, right? It's just like, God, that makes so much sense. Audience in the public speaker's frame, right? When someone's on stage and they're speaking, or me, I'm teaching you right now. You're in my frame, right? You're here to learn. And if you're not going to learn. And you're just going to keep doing the same stuff over and over and over. Keep making mistakes. Or you can come here to learn, be like, yes, let's listen to Rob. He's been doing this for over 10 years. He's talked to thousands of men. He knows exactly what he's doing. Let me look at it, obviously with some skepticism, because I need to be able to question everything. But the audience is in a public speaker's frame. When you're reading a book, you're in the author's frame. It doesn't matter if it's fiction or nonfiction, right? And then the audience is also in the speaker's frame, right? So if someone's just talking, right, to a group or whatever. They're in the frame. I think that's actually a duplicate. So, what do you think is the default female frame? Default, not what we see today in 2025, but what we see. What do you think is the default? Like if you go back thousands of years, I want you to think about this. You don't need to answer out loud, but just think about this. Why? What is the default female frame and why? You know it. Can't say it around some of your friends, but you know it. Everyone knows exactly what the default female frame is. Everyone. Now, I'm not talking about rare exceptions. I mean default, right? Exceptions don't define the rule. Most women, almost all women, default to what frame? Okay, I want you to think about that and always keep that in the back of your mind. But most women tend to fall in the masculine frame. They tend to be more manly. Why? Why do you think that is? Think about that. I just want you to think about that. The default is this, but they're actually doing this. There's lots of reasons for that. We're going to discuss that. It starts with how we operate today, right? Default is female. Their default is to default to their man, right? That's just how women are wired. It's how men are wired, right? To lead, and it's how women are wired. Like you go back hundreds of years, thousands of years, or whatever. Technology doesn't change any of this. They've tried to convince us that it does, but it doesn't. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what's in biology, right? You can't change. It's like you can't change your sex. You can change it, but biologically, your hormones and everything else, doesn't matter how much science you apply to your body, you're still a male or you're still a female, right? Doesn't matter how much plastic surgery you get, you just look different. You're still the same person. You're still the same DNA. You didn't change that. That's what frame is. Frame is at the fundamental level, right? Default is female frame. So today, most teachers are 80% female. And this is all the way up through 8th grade. So all of these men are defaulting to female frames for the first 10 to 12 years of their life. And when you consider how many fathers are absent, right? When you couple this with all the single mothers, there's a huge number of single mothers. Most, I think, depends on the race or ethnicity, because it does vary quite significantly. I'm not going to go into specifics on that. You can look it up yourself. But single moms is about, I don't have the statistic. I should pull this up. But I think it's about 45% of all kids are raised by single mothers. So when you have teachers, and then you have home, and you have all these deadbeat dads just like running off and taking care of their kids, right? So you're looking at 40 to 50% of the population is raised, their entire experience up till about 12 years old is female, right? They get taught with women at school, and then at home it's just a woman, right? Or maybe the dad works crazy hours, right? That's also a deadbeat dad, right? Because usually they're staying at work, but that's a different conversation entirely. So that's what I want to get to, the working fathers, right? The guys that work the extra hours. You've all seen them. You see these guys that stay extra hours at work because they don't want to deal with kids at home. They don't want to deal with family life. They don't want to deal with their wife. They don't have frame, right? So they're always getting this. They're getting a lot of this. And she's just like right here. And he's like, I can't take it, so I'll just stay at work. I had several people, especially when I worked in tech. All the time you'll see these Googlers, right? They'll work till like 9, 10, 11 at night. And it's like, I know what projects you're working on. I know you ain't that busy, but he just doesn't want to go home, right? Because that means he's got to spend time with his wife. He's got to spend time with the kids. And he actually has to have responsibility. Those are deadbeats too, right? But same thing. They may still be in the house, but they're not actually present in the house. So you got the Me Too movement, right? A lot of men are scared, myself included. And we're going to talk a lot about this on how to protect yourself in a wide variety of ways if you're dating, and even with your own wife, right? Because you never know what she's capable of. I hear some crazy stories, right? We can talk about this. Maybe we'll just have a group chat and we can go through all the stories that I hear of men getting reported to the police and all this, getting Me Too'd by their wife. It's nuts. But I digress. Then you have divorce, right? Most divorces, I think it's 45%, about 45% of all first marriages end up in divorce. And most of those are initiated by women. Why? Because the man doesn't have frame. It's very cut and dry. It's almost every single case. The man does not have frame. He doesn't know how to have frame, right? Then you got third wave feminism. This kind of goes with Me Too, where we've shifted from we want equality to men are dogs and women are better, right? That's kind of what third wave feminism is. I don't think everyone kind of buys into that narrative, so but it's still kind of lingering out there. You still have a lot of stuff you'll see in the media and occasional things, right? But there's more, right? Public education all operates from a feminine frame. Like the whole organization of public education operates from a feminine frame. Movies and streaming, it's everywhere. I'm going to start doing movie analysis on my YouTube, and I'll show you how much feminine frame is established. Like people don't even see it. It's just like so. But then when you see that all the time, and you see it at home, and you only have a single mom, and you're getting raised by kids, and screens are everywhere, so it's like it's like, how could you not default to the feminine frame? It's almost impossible. Family and friends. Most men are very feminine, right? Whether or not they admit to it or not. And I'm talking about guys that are like yoked, right? I have a buddy. He's in the army. He's yoked. He's good, and he acts tough, but he bows to his wife hard. Like hard. Don't even get me started. And you get your coworkers, all feminine frames, right? And then you get men getting friend zoned, right? Do not be. Women have two types of friends, right? and then online dating. Online dating gives women tons of options. It's so imbalanced, and this isn't anything to be mad about. I'm not like a black pill guy at all, right? This is how it works. Understand it. And understand how you need to work within that, right? We're just water. We just flow, right? The water flows around us. It doesn't change us. We're going to adapt to whatever environment we need to be in. And there's tons of bad advice online, right? You got therapy. Every person I've talked to that doesn't sign up for coaching always goes to therapy. I'm like, if you want to get divorced, please go to therapy. If you want to keep struggling in your relationship, please go talk to that coach. Yes, here, I have 10 coaches for you that are cheaper. Yes, I understand that. Go to them, have fun, good luck to you. Like, my calendar's full, I don't care. I'd love to help you if you want it, but if not, fine. So there's bad advice everywhere. And on YouTube, like everyone thinks they can just get it for free. But what about the past? So you might have thought, oh yeah, I had frame once. Probably didn't, right? I will be very clear that I didn't have frame for most of my life, right? Even when I ended relationships, I was trying to think back, did I have frame? And I started thinking about different situations in the relationship. I didn't have frame, no. You're probably a simp, right? Most men are simps. This is where we're defaulting to because of this feminine frame that's encompassed our whole society. Like I said, nothing to be mad about. It's just the way it is. You just need to operate within that framework, understanding how you can get out of it. So it's an unequal exchange of value. That's the easiest way. Got to give Tristan Tate credit. He was the one that just simplified the term, but basically unequal exchange of value. This could be money, this could be time, this could be affection, this could be gifts. It could be anything, right? But it's an unequal exchange of value, and most men are simping for their girls, right? You probably didn't lose frame. You probably just never really had it. It was never there. You may have just done some things that you thought where you had frame, but you're slipping, right? But I slip too, right? Like even to this day, like sometimes I don't have. Nobody has perfect frame all the time. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. So, and it's worsened usually by a lack of purpose, right? Men get a job, have kids, right? Robert Kiyosaki, go to school, get a job, have kids, put your money in the stock market, buy a house, and pay your taxes, right? I could say that to you right now, and you're like, fuck, that's my life. Most men in the United States or in the world, that is their life. That is their entire life. And then what? And then what? And then what? They don't have purpose. We got to find you a purpose. And we're going to go over this. So, and then what happens? People get comfortable. And it's fine. Comfort for a year, 2 years, even 3 years, is okay. But eventually, that lack of frame is going to start creeping in, right? If you're not working towards something, keeping your frame without some sort of end goal in mind or something you're working towards, some sort of bigger plan, something that's beyond you, some sort of world moving, and it doesn't need to be. You don't need to get crazy about it, right? But you got to have something you're working towards. And we'll talk a lot about purpose because I really like the exercises that I've worked on over the years to help guys find their purpose. And it's going to change. So it's not always easy. But what do you believe is the best way to recapture frame? So I have 4 main things that we're going to cover here. There's others, but these are kind of like, of all the thousands of men that I've talked to, these are the ones that just keep popping up, like left and right. Doesn't matter Doesn't matter what's going on. Like, these 4 things are the most consistent. Now, we're not going to talk about how to tackle all these. There's separate modules for each of these. We'll discuss these each week. And I have separate modules already built out, but we'll do the weekly talks, right? And if you have the course, then you'll have access to all this information already. So, and obviously if we're working on one-on-one, then, you'll get this really in depth with exercises and all that stuff. But what is the best way to recapture all the frame? It's these 4, right? So first, let's talk about the goal. What is the goal? Screenshot this, do whatever you want. The goal is to be a man that other men want to be. Then literally look at you and they're like, "Oh, who's that guy? Oh, he looks cool. I want to meet him, right? Or I want to be like him, or I want to do something, be around him, right?" It's the guy that men actually look up to, right? And it's not every man. Obviously, most of us have big egos, and we don't want to admit that we like another dude, right? And I don't mean romantically, obviously. I'm going to just clarify that. But, like other men like you look up to and you might follow, right? Maybe like a coach or a leader or something, right? But it doesn't have to be, it could be anyone. It's that guy that comes in and it's like, everyone's like, "Oh, he's cool," right? I used to be like this. I had a good friend when I worked at Southwest Airlines, and I was like, "Man, he's cool. I want to be like that guy." But as I started he stayed the same. As I started to improve and build my mindset and get stronger and stronger in all parts of my life, he just stayed the same. And now it's like, I don't want anything to do with that guy, right? Nice guy. Nothing wrong with him. Totally cool. But, he's like, we're not even on the same planet anymore. So you want to be that guy that other men want to be, right? And that other women want to fuck, right? You want to be the guy that other women look at you and they're like, "Yeah." So that way when you're out with your girl, right, going to a restaurant, getting coffee, going and seeing a movie, other girls are looking at you. And she's like, she's going to grab onto you as much as you can. That makes the intimacy 100 times better. There's a lot of ways you can do this. I'm sure you can think of the most obvious ones, right? Get in shape, dress nice, take care of yourself. But a lot of it's up here too. Most of it's up here, actually. All that stuff is just kind of dressing, icing on the cake. So let's talk about the 4 main things. The biggest one being a man's purpose. A man's purpose is never his woman, his family, kids, or the career, right? And if you have a business that's you're building towards something larger, then yeah, it might be part of your career. But generally, it's never your woman, it's never your family, right? Kids, when kids are really young, you might have the purpose for the kids for a short period of time when you're helping her get settled and everything, but you got to get right back on track, right? That train is leaving the station. You need to stay on that train and make sure it ain't going to leave anywhere, right? You don't want to stop at a station, the train breaks down, and you don't go anymore. You got to keep the train moving. What I see a lot of men do is they get to the kids station, they stop, they get off, and they never get back on. And you can't do that, right? Because maybe a year passes, maybe 2 years pass. If you have like a kid or a wife or someone with serious medical issues, then that might delay things a little bit naturally, right? You got to take care of business. But you got to get back on that train and you got to keep it moving, right? And keeping it moving isn't just going to your job every day that you're like, I could care less about. Because if you don't care about it, why would she think that you care about anything else, right? Why would she trust anything you say? So a man's purpose is his deepest, unwavering mission in life, his core truth and direction that transcends relationship or any external circumstance. Doesn't matter women, doesn't matter kids. It's like an onion, right? It's that center, right? But you're going to finish an onion sometimes, and you go to a new onion. You find a new onion. Purpose demands discipline and priority. You got to stick with it, right? My purpose has been for a long time to help men and build communities. That's always what I've done since I was in 5th grade. No matter where I went, I would always gather groups, right? Elementary school, I had my little posse of 4 friends, right? We brought together and we got really good bonds. And then in high school, it was a much bigger group. It was 30 people, right? Men and women, brought everyone together. As soon as I moved away, they all split up. They stopped talking. They started infighting and all that shit. And then most recently, I started a community. I didn't start a community, but there was a community that was worldwide. But we had a local community that I helped build much, much stronger, right? And then I moved on from that because I said, it's time to build my own community. It's time to find men that want to be better men and want to live with purpose, right? And it's always been the same, but how I've applied it has changed over the years. And it's always been helping men. It's always been helping men with relationships. So, All right, this purpose demands discipline and priority. Otherwise, men are just going to drift, right? They're just kind of floating. They get knocked off track, right? Anything can happen at any time. So important things to understand. Your purpose is going to evolve over time. It might not always be the same, right? Sometimes you might complete what you think is your ultimate purpose, and then you move on to something else. And that's okay, right? It takes priority over your relationships, always, right? And this isn't saying, I need to work on only this and I ignore my girl. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is it always takes priority, meaning if she gets in your way, say like if you want to colonize Mars like Elon Musk, right? And she's constantly giving you crap and she's always against you, then you're going to have to get rid of her, right? You're going to have to remove her from your life because she's not aligning with your purpose. And you'll find someone that will, 100%. And durations will vary. Sometimes you might be working on like little side projects, right? And you might work on it for 3 to 6 months or a year or something like that. It's layered, right? There's a lot of things to it. So the key is you need to have discipline and unwavering commitment. Once you fall into get a job, go home and watch Netflix, take care of the kids and do all that, and you fall into that pattern, you have no purpose, right? You're not working towards anything greater and you're just slowly dying. I mean, we're all dying, but you're dying at a much more rapid pace than someone that's working towards something. And that's really what is going to give you the most fulfillment. And once you're fulfilled, you can make sure she's fulfilled as well. Without even having to do it. She's just going to be fulfilled because she's around a man who is fulfilled, right? Elon Musk is a great example. Elon Musk's purpose has evolved from early ventures like PayPal. He wanted to change internet finance, to Tesla, sustainable energy, finish those, right? And now he wants to do multiplanetary life. I think he's doing this because my suspicion is because he knows that'll take him to the end of his life because it's going to take a very long time, right? Mars colonization is a long-term thread. Like that could very well happen, 30, 40 years at the end of his life, right? And I know he'd like to do it first, but he has all these, his basic purpose, if you look at its core, is to change humanity, right? Is to alter humanity's timeline and protect humanity, right? Because he's mentioned that multiple times. He thinks humanity will just cease to exist at some point. All right. So Steve Jobs, he wanted to revolutionize technology, right? And these guys are big guys, right? But they're obvious. Like, you'll know the examples and they have a purpose in life. Steve Jobs unfortunately passed away, but he had a purpose, right? He wanted to change everything about Apple. He left and then he came back because, it was his purpose to fix that. And there's other people, right? You could use politicians, right? Major politicians, probably the presidents, they have a purpose, right? Once Joe Biden became president, I think he fulfilled his purpose. I think that was his only purpose, is he really wanted to be president. Once he did it, he just kind of did his thing and he sailed off into the sunset, right? Regardless of your political opinions. Trump wants to make America great again, right? That's his whole theme. So that's his purpose, right? And then once, he's done, I'm willing to bet he's going to try to instill as much as he can in 2028 or whatever. He's going to instill as much as he can in the people that are the incumbents that are coming in, so he can keep that going, right? And he'll probably still take part in politics. I wouldn't be surprised. So everyone has a purpose, right? You need to have a purpose to be pushing towards something. It doesn't need to be anything as great as colonizing Mars or as grand, right? It's going to be individual for you. The second thing that constantly comes up when I talk to men is boundaries. They don't know how to set boundaries, right? What exactly are boundaries? Boundaries are non-negotiable lines that define what you will and won't accept in a relationship, ensuring mutual respect and maintaining your masculine frame. They're not about control or aggression, right? Not about yelling. It's not about physical control. It's not about abuse. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about standing firm, right? You're a rock, just like that title slide. You're a rock. She's the ocean. Doesn't matter what she's doing, right? And if she tries to chip away at the rock, that's a problem. That's crossing a boundary by setting clear boundaries and enforcing them through actions, right? When I first separated with my ex-wife, there was chances of reconciliation at some point, and then she crossed a boundary, and I was like, nope, no chance in hell. I am not going back, right? And that was it. That's it. I'm not going to dive into that. Well, that's for story time for another day. But once she crossed that boundary, no going back, right? So by setting clear boundaries and enforcing them through actions, not words, to protect your mission, right? Rebuild attraction and guide her towards submission. This is the key. When she knows you don't need her and you're just on this path and hey, I'm on this mission and I want you to join me. And I would love for you to join me. That's the approach we take. And if not, great. I wish you the best. I hope you have a wonderful life. I hope you get everything you want, right? No bitterness, right? It's all positive. Common examples in relationships, boundaries that men will have. is no yelling or insults. Like if she yells at you, like this is a pretty, for me, this is like kind of a fluid boundary because women get emotional, but you put her in line. No yelling or insults, no major spends, right? She can't go and spend, 30, 40, 50 grand. And it depends on your relationship, right? Like some people have completely separate finances and they both just chip in. So this is different. I'm just giving examples, right? No restricting access to the kids, no like taking the kids and saying I can't talk to them. This would be probably people that are separated. And then infidelity, right? Some guys are okay with infidelity. Personally, me, if she crosses that line, right? If that's a boundary, then that's it, right? Girls trips. I don't like women I'm dating take girls trips. It's not, I shouldn't say I don't, right? We don't set boundaries. I don't ever clear them, but if she does take girls trips, there will be results, right? There'll be consequences because, she's a free woman. She can do whatever the hell she wants, right? But I can also do whatever the hell I want, right? She can't have male friends, right? But these ones are more obvious. Some people struggle with these, some people don't. But everyone has different boundaries. Like I could create a long list of things that guys might have boundaries. So why boundaries matter? Without boundaries, she's going to constantly test your frame, right? She's going to lead. She's going to test it all the time because she doesn't really know what she can or can't do. It's going to cause disrespect, emotional chaos, and power imbalance, right? Boundaries reinforce your role as the leader. Basically says these are my expectations and I expect you to stick with them if you want to be part of my life, right? You're lucky to be part of my life, as every man is in this group, right? Every woman is very lucky to be a part of your life. Like ingrain that in your brain. Repeat that 100 times to yourself if you have to. You know this and I know this already, right? And prevent resentment. So how to identify boundaries. Now we have a specific exercise once we talk about the boundary frame. We're going to just spend a whole session on this because we can build this out. We're going to reflect on deal breakers that erode your trust and respect your mission, right? Some of the examples that I covered earlier, disrespect, financial decisions, right? We'll go through an exercise when we do the boundary frame to help you set up boundaries, right? To help you determine what is your boundaries. Because you'll find that often maybe you had boundaries, she crossed it and you didn't enforce it. And you're like, right? And then it's like once she knows she can cross, just like a kid, right? This is the best example is treat her like a child, right? If she feels like she can just cross the boundaries and there's no repercussions, then she's going to test the next boundary, right? Communicating boundaries. Now you state them to yourself. You don't ever, and you might even write them down. I always caution guys to write them down because their women are nosy and they might find things. So you got to be careful with this. Make sure you understand them. Like I won't tolerate this, right? No debates or emotions. You just act like the rock. You do not typically communicate these to your woman as she should already know. And when we go through the boundary frame, we'll talk about how you instill these boundaries in her. It's a lot of hypnosis and a lot of strategies that you can use to make sure she understands your boundaries very clearly without you having to say, don't do this, don't do that, right? I don't ever do that. I would never tell a woman she can't do something. I would always tell her, you're free to do as you please. Like, I don't care. If you want to go on that girls trip, go for it. I don't like it. I can't take you seriously, right? Whatever your language is, however you're going to structure it, right? But we'll talk about all the different strategies where you can enforce boundaries without actually saying it, because so then she'll feel she has freedom, but then she'll know, because you want her to make the choice herself. That's what we're getting at. This one's like, guys are like, what? Anyway, it's cool. Enforcing with consequences. When crossed, you want to respond with measured withdrawal or redirection. Never anger. What we call this is pimp hand strong, right? It's not about being aggressive. It's not about being physical. It's not about yelling. It's not about screaming. It's not about slamming doors. It's not about doing any of that stuff. Basically, you just reward compliance and you penalize violations, right? So we're training positive behavior. Women do this to their men all the time. She does this. Any guy that's lost frame significantly, she's been training him hard, right? She rewards compliance. She'll give him sex. She thinks sex is his reward. In reality, sex is her reward. And she penalizes violations. I mean, she'll withhold sex, or she'll yell at him, or she'll withdraw, or she'll go out with her friends, or whatever. So she must pay penance to get back into your good graces. That's just how it works, right? We'll talk a lot about this in the boundary frame. All right. Next thing is the sexual being. So a lot of men I talk to, they're like, I was never really sexual, initiate it. And then they only do it like at night. I'm like, oh my God, that's the worst thing you possibly do. I never have night sex. This is a whole different conversation. I never have night sex, always morning sex. I don't even like sex at night. Well, sometimes I do. It depends. But I rarely, with your intimate partner, like try switching to morning. Watch it make a difference. We could go down that rabbit hole. All right. So become a sexual being. You need to embrace your masculine desire openly, without apology, right? This is how you polarize her. This is the sex frame. And we'll talk a lot about this intimacy frame, I call it, just because sex frame gets flagged on socials. But the intimacy frame, it's about establishing, just about being open with your sexuality, right? It's about, whatever you want to do, just do it, right? Within reason, right? You're not going to whip it out in public and risk getting thrown in jail. But if you want to flirt with her, right? And it's not just about sex either, right? So let's be very clear about this. This is about like pinching her butt, it's about flirting, it's about doing all these different things. And a lot of guys don't really understand how to do it. So you need to review it as like an expression. Like the sexual energy that a man and a woman share is the most powerful energy in the entire planet, right? Because it's the only thing that they can share together. And this is why girls that sleep around and guys that sleep around, tend to be depolarized on that, right? They don't understand the value of it. Because just another one, right? Just share that energy with anyone. It doesn't work like that. So that's a different conversation entirely as well. So view intimacy as an expression of your core purpose, not a distraction from it, right? Lead with confident touch and presence. When I say it's part of your core purpose, not a distraction from it, because a lot of guys, like, they'll just, especially when you first start dating or in that first year or two, it's like all about sex, right? Like, it's like she's just all about sex, but it's not even about that, because you can get sex anywhere, right? Like, any decent guy can get sex anywhere they want. You just have to, apply yourself. So you got to lead it with confident touch and presence, inviting her feminine energy to flow freely, right? There's a little bit of woo-woo stuff, but I want you to understand that you have to cultivate that sexual polarity, right? You have to push through. I use intimacy and that sexual energy to push through her emotions, right? And it's grounded. Like, oftentimes when she's upset and she's yelling, I'll turn it into like an intimate or a sexual thing, right? Without even saying much. Just, it's all physical. But we'll talk about the intimacy frame. Try not to use the sex word. All right. And then avoid suppressing lust, channeling boldly to deep. And this helps prevents neediness, right? Because what happens is she might say no, or she might not be in the mood. Maybe you're in a dry spell. Hopefully we get rid of all those no's. But I do understand some women take a little bit while to like reset. And then you're basically you're not going to be needy for it. She's going to be needing it from you. She's going to start initiating it. Emotional reactivity. This is a huge one. And we'll go through this when we talk about the rock frame. Because the rock frame is how different strategies on how to deal with when her emotions are swirling, she yells at you, or she says some stupid remark that you're like, what, woman? What did you just say to me? But you have to understand, women are women, right? It's nothing to hate. Women just talk. They're much better with their words. They talk 10 times as much as we do. I think the average woman says over 10,000 words a day, and the average man says like 300 or something. I can't remember the exact figure. But yeah, so you have to understand that she has moods. It's just temporary wave, right? You're the rock. Doesn't matter what the wave's doing. The ocean can be smooth. Oh, everything's great. The ocean could be... And also part of the rock frame, we talk about how to stir up drama, right? Because sometimes you need to provoke the ocean a little bit, because if she provokes it, then she controls the drama, right? If you control the drama, if you make her upset and you create drama, I don't like it. To be 100% clear, I do not like it at all, but it's a necessary evil. All right, so respond from purpose, not your emotion, right? To prevent the frame collapse during tests. And you especially when you're just learning this stuff, you're going to slip up, right? It's not going to be perfect. That's okay. That's how you learn, right? It's supposed to be challenging. So you got to practice non-reactivity, right? Sometimes just breathe deeply, observe feelings without acting on them. Just breathe, just look at her, maybe smile, try to make light of it. And we go over a lot more things when we go over the rock frame, about how to stir emotions and then how to deal with her emotions, right? There's two parts of it. So in a female-heavy society, resist cultural pressure to emote equally, right? You want to be as calm as possible, right? And this is, if you have those things that are just driving you insane, you can journal. But just be careful if she knows how to find it and read it. You can journal online, right? I journal on a secret Facebook page that I only have the password to. So she would never find that. And you just make sure you log out after every time you journal. But you could do it on anything. You could do it on Notion or something like that, right? I'll probably give my boys, access to. I'll probably give them the password at some point. But, if it's just your journal, so nobody else needs to see it. So build resilience by prioritizing your mission over her chaos, right? So as long as Like if she's going crazy and she's like unloading on you, and you get home from work and she's just, it doesn't matter. It's like you have your mission. Maybe your mission is to get in the best shape of your life because you want to do a bodybuilding competition, right? And she's gonna get home. You get home and she's pissy or whatever, and she's having her thing. But you gotta go to the gym. Maybe you gotta say hi to the kids. You gotta go to the gym, take care of your whatever you have to do for your weightlifting thing. Maybe you're gonna do some research that night on new strategies, right? Maybe you're cutting that night. Maybe you need to read to make sure you have emotional clarity. And you're just gonna like barely acknowledge her, right? If she doesn't, remember, if she doesn't treat you well, she doesn't get attention. When she treats you well, she gets lots of attention, right? And you need to be firm in this, really firm. So this is the frames that we're gonna use throughout the whole entire program, right? There's more. I keep adding more because, I've built all these and I'm like, oh yeah, here's another good one, right? And it starts, at lower levels because the 6-hour frame is like pretty intense, and most guys can't employ it correctly. It's tough. The intimacy frame is also challenging depending on where you're at. I work with guys that are mostly not really intimate, so that's why I push it a little bit later. But it depends. Some people are intimate, then we might push that up because we want to be able to make sure they're getting good intimacy. But the 2/3, the comic, conviction, purpose frame is one of the earliest ones, and integrity frame. The list, right? The list is one of my favorite, and a lot of guys don't think about. And then we have all the dark frames. These are only taught IRL. And this is just because these are topics that are definitely not PC. These are topics that are more related to intimacy, more related to getting her completely locked into your frame, right? And it's hypnosis, right? It's not manipulation. Like slave is probably not a good name for it. I can find a different one. Sub relates to BDSM, right? If you're into that kind of stuff. And then I'm sure you can figure out what the rest are. Maybe, right? So there's so many different frames that you can install. And these frames are only taught in person behind an NDA and if you signed up for the full coaching program, you get this, it's all included. But the important thing to understand is like these frames are like stuff you don't really you wouldn't talk to your friends about. Like this is stuff you just kind of keep to yourself, and then you know it and you're able to employ it. And it's immensely valuable tools that you can use in a relationship to develop a none of this is abuse, none of this is bad, none of this is, it's just stuff that wouldn't be considered politically correct, right? Like most things that are underground, right? You start talking about Tartaria, or, you start questioning Christianity, or you start talking about, suspicion about three-letter agencies. Like all this stuff is like not PC. And that's just because they don't want you talking about it. So for me, things people don't want you talking about, I always want to research more. I don't know if maybe you're the same, right? You like, oh, you can't talk about that. Yeah. So this will be taught at the IRL. I don't know if we'll be able to get them all in, but I'll get the most important ones in because it's a 2-day event, which is included with the full coaching program. And these are pretty intense, like especially the conflicted frame. Like I'm personally not proud of that one, but it's some powerful stuff. Yeah. All right. So I think that's the last one. Yeah. So if you have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off, and then we'll take all of the questions because the questions are for the people that showed up. So thanks for coming, and let's get to those questions.